to make America utopia, take away the economy from those who rigged it. As I see it, class warfare, the only resort to right-wing doom. It's worth it. How to talk to your right-wing relatives, friends, and neighbors, and other books written by Egberto Willis. Welcome to Politics Done Right. My name is Egberto Willis, your host. Good morning, Houston. Good morning, Harris County. Good morning to the great state of Texas. Good morning to the United States of America. And of course, good morning to the entire world receiving our signals via the magic of El Internet. The Internet created by we the people, created by all of us, or combined and collective intellect, but now controlled by the parasites who always do that. Take what we've put together, what we've created, and just use their capital to own it. Anyway, before we go any further, let's move on to the geniuses, Los Genios, in the studio. Good morning, brothers.
Well, every now and then I have to play the national anthem because I'm beginning to think that I'm not in America anymore.
Oh,
I'm
Lord.
beginning to wonder about that. I have a rant today. Fortunately, Justice Roberts decided to grow a pair and say, Donald, this is not the way we do things, so cut it out. Did you happen to see the article on that?
Yes, I saw that. I was so proud of John Roberts. It's amazing the little things that you have to look out for to try to make you proud of somebody, but I was proud of him yesterday.
Well, yeah, because look, they're getting ready for a tsunami of lawsuits. The Supreme Court is. They're not going to be able to decide anything on anything else other than Donald Trump lawsuits because they're filing them every day. Every single day, there's another pile of them. They're trying to stop this. So good luck there, John Roberts.
Yep, he has
Jack,
a
what
lot of
you
work
got,
to
man?
do.
Jack has a almost full page of wisdom here for us, so I think we should get to that, and we'll just leave my rant alone.
All right, Jack, give me that wisdom, my brother. Give me that wisdom.
I was enjoying his rant.
That would be one of us.
No, that will be two of us then.
Okay.
All right. Good morning, Egberto. How are you?
I am doing great, my brother. Talk to me.
All right. Billionaire oligarchs have captured the mechanism of government, and they have decided to terminate the governmental employees that do the work of administering government programs, like Social Security. Why? Because the billionaire class is being groomed by very unscrupulous advisors that the poor, the old, and other people that rely on social services to make them whole are dragging down the corporate profit and need to be eliminated. The Trump Musk administration are the puppets the billionaires are using to tear down the structures of social services.
Yeah, and an added note on that, when they're dismantling these departments, they're just saying, well, look, they're not working. They're not working. That's like buying a car and start taking parts off of it until it doesn't work and then blaming the car. So
Exactly.
they're blaming the victim for the crime. This is
Yes.
exactly what the Trump administration does. It blames the victim for the crime. And it's just disgusting. And that's all I've got to say.
Well,
Until later.
until later. There you go. There you go. But let me tell you, folks. Before we get into the program today, perusing my different sources over the before I get on air, and I saw this TikTok from Joyanne Reed, and she kind of highlighted a story that isn't covered here much. As you guys know, Donald Trump has been talking about invading Panama because China is built. China is going to take over the canal because of the ports it has invested in on both sides of the canal. Of course, they kind of coerced themselves out of that and got one of Trump peoples to buy the ports in Panama, in Balboa, the country I'm from, to try to, just bully folks around. Again, you can bully a country of 4 million people. Now, it's interesting because while we are threatening war with Panama, if China is close to the canal, and whatever lies we want to come up with to try to place it, the world goes on. And there's one thing that Donald Trump doesn't realize. We are 4% of the population, and then there's the other 96% of the population around the world. And as we throw our temper tantrums and as we cut our support and relationship and assistance to the rest of the world, even as we take more from the rest of the world than anyone else, as we go ahead and rant about Greenland and taking other territories and trying to be mini Putins or mini Hitler or whomever you want to call out, these other countries continue to move on. And there's several subjects here that I want to kind of bring up real quickly before we get into the program proper. Number one is as as Donald Trump lives in the past, as he wants to go back to fossil fuels, as he wants to, throw whatever up in the air and destroy our environment, he's putting America more and more behind. When Biden was in office, you can have whatever complaints you want about Biden, but we got a lot of scientific programs funded. We got solar programs funded. We got green energy programs, not as much as we would like, but we got a lot of stuff funded. We got medical programs funded. Now, we have a troglodyte in office, along with a billionaire toddler in office that is dismantling the things that make things work. I want to remind you, the capitalist system don't take risk. It's all about maximization of profits. As such, what a capitalist system does is it actually tries to get whatever it can at the least cost to its investors. That's the definition of the program. The maximization, or I should say, the efficient allocation of resources. And if said allocation means make somebody else do the work and the intellect for you, that's what it does. In other words, that's the reason why we don't want the capitalist system in certain parts of our economy, vis-a-vis medicine. Every type of public service that it gets into, it destroys. And it's not doing the bad thing, it's doing the appropriate thing. It's to maximize profits for the shareholders. That's what it's defined as, and therefore there's no reason for it to do good by the public sector. But that said, what we have now, and these are is as we go through that path of Musk through or Trump through Musk killing research, uh, killing support for countries that need our support at any given time, continuing making deals like we try to make with Ukraine, where we take over their resources, we extort them for their resources. Other countries with means are taking other paths. And that one major country with means is China. Of course, another one is Brazil. Another one is, to some extent, even South Africa. And what they're doing is they're creating relationships around the world. And as you know, as Donald Trump threatened Panama as to try to control that shipping lane, China has decided to do a whole lot of investments now in ports. Guess where? In Mexico, right? And in the process of doing that, finding out that in as much as the canal gives a full waterway to cross, working with resources in Mexico and having big ports on both sides, what it gives you is a 5-day transport reduction. I want you to think about that. Containers can get across the land barrier 5 days quicker from certain parts in China than actually going through the canal. So all this talk about that Trump is doing is just forcing investments in other areas that many times turns out advantageous for those who were first aggrieved. So you got to be careful. I mean, none of this is talk or spoken about on our mainstream media so the Americans can understand what hole Donald Trump is actually digging for the country. And when we wake up, by the time we wake up, ports would have been built, research would have been done, and we would continue to have fallen behind. You realize that we allowed these tech bros, I've always told you that these guys that call themselves their tech bros that are considered so damn smart in America aren't all that smart after all. You know, we have Nvidia building these chips that takes a whole lot of power to run our AI. We have the Musks of the world building electric cars, but again, with the tariffs that we place on other countries for our electric cars, you know, an electric car system that is way behind around the world. We are so behind. But look, Tesla, the electric car genius. Not really. Much better cars from overseas, and it can't get to our shores because we have a big tariff on electric cars. So let's be careful how we point fingers here. Electric cars. China is about to build a big electric plant in Mexico. Now they're kind of holding back because they're saying we don't want our technology stolen and gotten into the United States. Maybe Musk will steal the technology. I don't know. But the thing about it is, yeah, China steals a lot of people's technologies, but we do the same thing too. So let's not try to make it, how it isn't. So as we go through the next few years under Trump, if we if we allow the policies that he stands for to come to fruition, what we are constantly doing, we used to have this joke about Russia, that Russia is nothing more than a superpower with a gas station. In other words, the only thing Russia was good for was the raw material that comes out of its pipes. But as far as innovation and etc., hey, we took all their scientists, we took all, because again, we had a better economy, a better economic system that fomented or that allowed these other people to get things done. It allowed the freedom to build and create. And under Trump, all of that is going away because we're reducing our investments from all our agencies. And remember, as I mentioned before, the capitalist system do not take risks. The universities and the grants given by the NIH and the grants given by these other governmental agencies, these grants are where much of the initial research occurs. So when they laugh about experimenting about the electrical carrier of the frog's legs and then they make fun of it, but that research turns into ergonomic designs, or that research turns into exoskeletons for the impaired, for the paralyzed. And it's like, wow, how did they figure about that? Well, you remember that part, that research that we laughed at? That's where it came from. So I bring this up because as a society, as a country, we have been severely lacking in critical thinking by design. Every time we come to a point where we begin to promote critical thinking, we have the troglodytes on the right, the parasites, and the neoliberals who continue to think backward. Like I said, there's nothing about intellect and capitalism that go hand in hand. Nothing about it goes hand in hand. Because right now, the innovation is coming from other places. I brought up NVIDIA earlier and the tech bros. And the reason I brought that up is to point out something very important. We restricted the sales of NVIDIA processors and these other powerful processors to China and other countries we considered enemies or otherwise. Of course, we know China isn't an enemy. China builds all of Trump's products are a lot of Trump products are actually built in China. He doesn't even spread the wealth here to the American worker. He builds it in China. But uh, when we restricted NVIDIA because of the amount of processing power we thought was needed for AI, what did the Chinese government and their scientists do? They invested a small amount of money in their own development and in not having brute force to do computations, which NVIDIA processors gave. They developed their not only their own processors, but they also developed technology in the AI technology to not require as much power as the AI technology by ChatGPT or Grok, which is the Twitter one, or any other ones. So they are able to do a whole lot more with a whole lot less. When you put strains on others, what you really do many times is you allow that other to be that much more powerful because they've had to develop with less. The reason Tiger Woods excelled, the reason Serena Williams excelled, is that the pressure that was placed on them for who they are made them have to work that much harder than the average, and in doing so, made them that much better. That same corollary applies to what we're doing to the rest of the world. It'll make them better technologically and fiscally and otherwise than we are. So as we continue to fail in critical thinking, in understanding these concepts, as our media continues to fail us in informing us about what's happening around the world, we're only failing ourselves. So I will urge all of us to start mitigating this, and that mitigation starts by making sure Donald Trump, the destructor of America, doesn't get the leeway to do what he's currently doing. Now, on a part of personal commentary here, there's one thing that has made my blood boil, and that is how Donald Trump has been dealing and demeaning my Caribbean brothers and sisters. And you know that let me give the story real quick. Donald Trump is threatening all the Latin American and Caribbean countries who have Cuban doctors in these countries, Cuban doctors and nurses, that if they don't rid themselves of them, they will deny them, meaning these heads of states of these Caribbean countries, heads of states of Caribbean countries, they will deny them access or to the United States by denying them visas. I say that clearly. The great thing that has occurred with the CARICOM countries, that's the Caribbean countries of which the United States has a membership in. The good thing about what these guys have said is, you know what? If you can choose not to give us visas, that's your choice. But we choose to do what's right by our people. And let me tell you, you don't see the United States having a whole lot of medical doctors and otherwise throughout the Caribbean assisting and making sure that disease aren't spread, etc. But you know which country manufactured some of the best doctors and nurses around the world? That's a little country called Cuba. Cuba has some of the best doctors and the best nurses in the world, and they use that as their goodwill around the entire Caribbean, Latin America, and Africa. You can find them even in France and elsewhere because they're very good doctors. There are 26,000 of them around the entire area, giving services to mitigate areas that don't have as many doctors, etc. And what the United States is saying, we are not giving you any money. We are not giving you anything, but we want to tell you that you can't allow Cuban doctors to work on your soil. Remember, they did something similar when a lot of engineers went over to Venezuela and Grenada. That's the reason Reagan invaded Grenada. See, all these things aren't talked about in detail on our media here in the United States. And it's a huge, huge danger. All right, folks, that's my morning rant of stuff that more than likely you have to dig deep into Al Jazeera or Reuters or one of them to find. But let's go ahead and go to, before I start the program, since Patrick is already here, let's go ahead and say good morning, my brother Patrick. How are you doing?
Hey, good morning. How are y'all?
We're doing fine, sir. Talk to me.
Hey, I wanted to touch on Roberts a little bit. Y'all, I don't want to be discouraging, but we seem excited about him whispering something about, hey, take it easy in Trump's ear. What we're seeing is we're seeing a leopard eat that guy's face. We're seeing the Supreme Court get FOFO'd, and we need to really evaluate how this happened. The Republican president stacked that court not with people that were willing to do their job, but they were willing to backstab America and let deregulation, privatization, and the dismantling of democracy and the government happen. And these guys aren't smart enough to understand the consequences that come behind it. And now this guy is suffering consequences, and he's like, oh, goodness gracious, what did I do? They wanted this, but they didn't have the foresight to understand what came with it. And now they're upset.
Agreed. Let me just say, once a police officer pulled me over on my way to KPFT, and I really didn't do anything. It was one of those DWB's things, right? And I came on the radio that very day and started giving him praises because he was actually nice to me and he didn't give me a ticket. I didn't deserve a ticket, but usually a ticket comes anyway. And I gave him credit. And my progressive brothers and sisters tore me up on that show that I did. And they tore me up because they said he should be doing his job. I shouldn't give him any kudos. And my answer to them was that the reason I did it is I'm hoping that when somebody does something good, no matter how marginal it is, that it encourages them to do more good. Because when they do bad, they're praised for doing bad for Donald Trump. You know, Donald Trump, people's praises him when he cuts that regulation that you talk, all right, or rather support that regulation to destroy the earth that you're talking about, which I agree with your statement, your sentiment completely. So it's not just a happy clap for the Supreme Court justice. The, it's hopeful that it'll encourage him to do better, realizing that he will get a backslap if he does. That's all. But you're right. I can't argue with what you're saying at all.
I appreciate the pushback. To me, it just looked like an arsonist was lecturing a firefighter for not
I love the way you said that. An arsonist lecturing. I'm going to have to put that in one of my blogs. So don't worry, I'll credit you, my brother.
I don't need the credit. Just credit a progressive. And then we talked a little bit about Cuba. We can't go there because I believe, and I say this all the time, they do the United States and capitalists in general do not want us to go visit a different model that's successful. And you're right, Cuba has tried to help us out over and over, and both Republican presidents in my lifetime always denied the help. They tried to come help here during Katrina, and they were told absolutely not by Bush. They tried to help with COVID, and they were told absolutely not. For principles, people here suffered and died just to keep us apart.
It's interesting because Cuba did a lot better than we did with COVID, and they developed their own vaccine. But the funny thing about it is they didn't even use the vaccine to save their country. They actually use public policy, masking, distancing, cleanliness. All those things were used in Cuba to ensure that their population didn't go through the wrath, the killing that went through in our population. And that isn't to say, look, one of the reasons Cuba is doing very bad is that we have made sure to cripple Cuba's economy. Look, we had a lot of opportunity to work with Cuba, a lot of opportunities to work with them, but because they didn't follow our model verbatim, we just couldn't have that because it was a threat to capitalism. Same thing with Hugo Chavez. Hugo Chavez came into being because of what capitalism did in his country. What capitalism did, we can go through the entire Latin America. Read the book Capitalism. What is the word? I forgot the book by that wonderful writer lady in Canada that wrote the book. But again, the biggest fear is that for us to ask a question in the case of America and our oil companies, why is it that all those minerals on our public lands, the profits all go to the few shareholders? In other words, why do we allow the few to get all the spoils from our land? And in Venezuela, they said all of that belongs to the people. In America, it belongs to the corporation, not the people. So the carbon, the oil, the uranium, the materials that are under our earth that here in America doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the corporation that find it. And if you happen to be on land where you own the mineral rights, remember that you get pennies on the dollar for anything the corporation recovers, something we rarely ever know. Anything else? I got a lot of calls, my brother.
Yeah, they usually cheat those meters too, so they don't even pay you for the amount of minerals they take out of the ground. For the PDR posse, I would strongly suggest looking at the movie. The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. The Venezuelan 2002 coup. That will show you everything that you need to know about Chavez. He was a wonderful person, and he benefited 95% of the people in his country. He was a great individual, and you will see how the media here twists reality.
Oh, it's a shame.
The revolution
Will not be televised. 2002. It is amazing because I also, there are a lot of these documentaries now on Netflix. Is that one on Netflix right now? Or is it elsewhere?
No, this was an Irish film studio that went over there to interview him because of just how dynamic he was and how popular he was in South America. And while they were there, the United States tried to overthrow him, and his people put him back in power because they loved him that much.
It's amazing. And poverty plummeted. They don't like to tell you those parts of the story, but it's now Maduro is a different animal. I'm sorry, Maduro is a different animal, but Chavez really had the will of the people, etc. But anyway, let me move on. Patrick, I'll see you at 3, my brother.
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
You too. All right, Jim, come on in. Brother Jim, come on in.
Hello, am I on?
Yes, you are on, sir.
Good morning, Egberto. How are you doing, man?
I am doing fine, my brother. Talk to me.
Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, you were talking. Okay, hold on a minute. You were talking about some dude talking about your typical rant about big corporations and things like that, and you said something pretty interesting. And I believe what you said was, I want a big government to watch over this country so that the big corporations don't put the boots to our neck.
Yes, you're right. I did say that.
And yesterday you were talking, or no, last Friday you were talking to Brian, and you were talking about something similar, and you told Brian that you'd rather be controlled by have a big government than a big corporation.
Hmm. Yes, I did say that.
So, all right. And my opinion, I'm not sure if a big government is really something I really think you or I should really want.
Hmm.
And the reason I say that is because of a question I want to ask you, Mr. Egberto.
Sure.
And that question is, what if this government gets big enough where they put the boots to our neck? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're right. And so, by the way, thank you for bringing that up because I think this is something that needs explanation as well. So let me just salute the people in the chat that I forgot to do. Give me about 30 seconds and then I'll answer that. Welcome aboard, A Gulf Twitler, Eric Hayes, Lee the Bearcat, Jacqueline Campisi. Let me see who else is here. Deborah Ann and Joe from Los Angeles. I think I got mostly everybody. If I missed you, just drop a line in the bottom and I'll do it. Let's answer Jim's question now. Okay, Jim, I'm going to give you the overall flying on top premise. The flying on top premise is a corporation has no relationship with the people in its financial structure. Okay, in other words, the corporation is an autocratic institution. There's no doubt about that. No questions asked. Anything. You have a president. You have a board of directors, a president, and under that there's a hierarchical model. And you don't vote on who those people are. Those people create a company and then they do whatever the hell they want to do. People will say, well, they're controlled by what people purchase. But again, with the power that they have over we, the people, the government, they can actually get regulations and all these other things instituted so that they have inherent control of us all. With government, we have a constitution that governs the behavior of said government. In other words, if you believe in what the founding fathers wrote, I believe in some of what the founding fathers wrote. They made a hell of a lot of mistakes, and we're living through those right now. But, and that's not to put that every constitution doesn't have its problems. They didn't know what America would look like today. All right, so that said, whatever it is currently constitutionally, the government is we the people. So when there are things that we don't like occur, we have the opportunity to vote them out. So government can't get so big that it puts the boot on your neck and we sit back and say, oh, government, the boot's on our neck. If a corporation puts its boot on your neck through its prowess by the control of government, that can occur. When you have a government that a corporation cannot control, it reverts right back to the official letter of the Constitution of the United States, which says we are in the Declaration of Independence that says we, the people of the United States, and we are governed by a constitution that determines the separation of states, determine people's rights. We have within our constitution as well is something called the Bill of Rights that actually assigns inalienable rights to the individual and not the collective. So what I'm saying, the reason I said that wasn't by accident, nor do I run away from a statement. Having large corporations and small government is an autocratic system. Having a government by the people, for the people, that is large enough so that no corporation can control is the only viable way to have true democracy. You can answer that, Jim.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, but I think you're forgetting.
Hold 1 second. Hold 1 second. Tell me what did I say that you think is incorrect? That is a place to start.
Well, I think. Okay, give me a minute here. A government controlled by a big government cannot be controlled. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that what you're forgetting is that corporations and government are both run by people, and people can have their own agendas and their own beliefs. And when you said
Yes,
that
you're
corporations,
correct. You're correct. You're correct. But again, you missed the point. You're correct, but you missed the point, sir. I had to interrupt you because of time, but let me just say, you're correct. They're both controlled by people. You're correct. But guess what? In the corporation side, the people don't get to elect those people. On the government side, the people do get to elect those people. Don't you agree?
and if the government gets big enough to get rid of the election and take power for themselves,
There's a constitution, sir. There's no the government
and
again.
find a way
That
to
brother, that is the reason why I am glad you are a listener, because we can take some of the lies that you hear for those people who are anti-government and autocratic tell you. The government can only do what we, the people, want the government to do. But if we constitutionally change so that corporations can be the power, the ones that carry the power, at that point we have lost it. The government, we have to assert who the government is. The government is not a separate entity. The government is us all. You select your school board, you select your mayor, you select your, well, not your president, but you select your board of electors, you select your governor. All of that is done by we, the people. You don't do that for Exxon. You have no idea who the president of Exxon is. You have no idea what the president of Exxon is doing to the environment unless you have regulations that tell Exxon it has to report what it's doing to the environment. Isn't that true? Jim?
yeah. I'm here. Okay, so I can't control corporations and things like that. Fair enough. I can't decide that. But what you want is not really viable. Well, what about what am I doing?
That's all right. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jimmy. It's okay.
Uh, uh, I gotta tell you about
Yeah,
it.
wait, let me just tell you, Jim. Look, let me tell you. Our media and our systems corrupt your feeling of government. I'm hoping that I have convinced you about government. And look, we don't need to be. All of us should have the ability to say, "Ah, I see why you thought that way." If you don't have an answer right now, you can reevaluate and call sometime if you find something that can go against my
Yeah,
argument.
I'll do that. I'll reevaluate some things. Okay.
I appreciate that. But I mean, that is what we are here for, to have these kinds of discussions. Thank you, brother. Have a great day.
Oh, hang on. Can I
All right, let's go to Bruce. Come on in, Bruce.
Good morning, Alberto. I'll be fast today. Regarding the ceasefire or the partial ceasefire, Putin plans on keeping the lands that he occupies when this is all over. And the less damage to the energy infrastructure, the less rebuilding he has to do. You'll notice that he and Trump didn't come out and say, okay, we agree not to hit hospitals anymore, elementary schools anymore, civilian targets anymore. They only care about assets. He could give a darn about people. I'm done.
You're absolutely right, my brother. Thank you, Bruce. Let's go to Alan. Come on in, Alan.
Good morning, Alberto. I'm glad to be able to call you, but I'll get right to it. Well, just as a quick aside to Jim, if he's concerned about, big government and all that, he should think about what happened with Exxon and the Exxon Valdez. Because without the government, just even what little modification happened there never happens, and that place just becomes unlivable without government oversight. Now, the other thing I have to say is that with supply side people, what they don't understand is this. When you have a big government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people, they can invest in the individual. It's like, look, if we have something like national health care helps to get people well and keep people well. And then they can return that manyfold by creating and developing new things that make the society better. But nobody over in that area seems to see that. I mean, you've spoken to my brother many times. I'm a beneficiary of that right now. I just wanted to say thank you.
Alan, I wanted to say, God, you sound exactly like your brother. But anyway, let me just say this, okay? And that is
We're
correct.
both
I,
our father, but another day.
there you go. But here's the thing, right? And I'm glad that Jim called, because Jim gives us an opportunity to point out things in more detail than you would ever get in on commercial TV. And the reason why is this: you have to understand that in every country, whatever economic system they have, whether it's socialist,
Hmm.
democratic, or whatever, you have to create a certain form of indoctrination to justify your system, right? And the thing about it
Yeah.
is, my goal isn't to justify a system. My goal is that we should have a system that serve us all. I don't care what the hell you want to call it. We should have a system that serve us all. But what we currently have as in America is an indoctrination to the economic system by a lot of folks, and an industry that is designed to confuse just so that we don't change the system, a system that benefits a minute few. It keeps another group that's comfortable, and the rest of us pay for it. But anyhow, thank you, Alan. I got to go to the other call, okay?
Okay. All right. All right.
Okay,
Thank you.
let me go to Patrick real quick. Patrick, come on in.
Hey, for the caller before Alan, I mean, it was a good question, but we should ask ourselves: are we more free when we're clocked in for a job, or when we're clocked out on our days off? Um, uh, as soon as we clock in, our freedom is diminished, and our choices are diminished so much, it's alarming. And so to think that if a corporation was running our government, that wouldn't happen all the time is silly. And the the idea that um, a, a, a government can abuse its power is very true. We're seeing it right now. But the way our government is abusing its power is it's taking away all of the checks and balances that we have built into it. We have a president that's ignoring it, and he is putting his boot on people's necks.
And that is wait,
I just
Patrick.
wanted to point that out.
I appreciate that, and that's why I kind of let you jump the stack. I knew that was coming, but I also want to say that it's important for us to realize it. When I spoke to Jim earlier, and I talk about constitutional mistakes, and a lot of mistakes are usually made in these documents, either because folks didn't know, or they wanted to give an advantage to a group of folks. And in the case of the founders of the country, both of those actually apply. But we'll talk about that another time, sir. Thank you, Patrick. Let's go to Bard. Come
Thank
on in, Bard.
Yeah, Berto, I wanted to ask you, it kind of ties in. Why did Elon Musk have to go and rescue these astronauts off the space station? Why didn't NASA do that?
Because NASA did what a lot of when I talk about having the government having certain types of control, when you cede your control to the private sector, what happens then is you depend on the private sector. NASA developed the Saturn V rocket, the most powerful rocket on Earth then, and to some extent one of the most powerful rockets today. It went into mothballs so that we could create a private space industry. I don't have a problem creating a private space industry. What I have a problem with is having, and you are correct, Bard, is having a government that limits itself by having a for-profit dependent on something like a space. I mean, to be dependent on for something like a space station above our atmosphere. The reality is we should have NASA, a government controlled rocket, should always be present for our astronauts, who are government employees on Earth. I'm with you. But if you cut their budgets and you try to make it that the private sector has to build it, the private sector charges a hell of a lot more to build it, a hell of a lot more to get there. and they use math, so all kind of false arithmetic to say how somehow paying the billionaire is cheaper than developing it yourself. It has failed, and I'm with you. NASA is the one who should have gone and bring its own people down. But the rocket that failed, I want you to remember, was built by whom again? Boeing, another offshoot private company. So thank you so kindly for the question, Bart. Anything else?
Well, I think you answered Jim's question, Jim. The government is not coming to save you. It's up to
No,
yourself.
that's no. That is
Do it.
what a person
Good
with
at that.
limited understanding would make a statement like you just made, my brother. But that's okay. We understand where you're from. Thank you, Bard. Let's go to Dave. Come on in, Dave.
Hello?
Yeah, you're on, Dave.
Yes, sir. How do we get money out of politics? You know, I
Uh,
think that's the main thing, and
you
and
hit
maybe a black tax.
you hit the nail on the money. I was a board member of Move to Amend, and we wrote a bill called the 28th Amendment, and that 28th Amendment, we had a whole lot of sponsors for it. The problem is we didn't have enough sponsors to get it voted, and that amendment said two things. One, money is not speech, and two, corporations are not people, because right now a corporation have in effect its own social security number. So that was we've been working on that since Citizens United. Citizens United is that bill that pretty much gives corporations whatever they they want by giving them on unrestricted free speech via money, of course. So we've been working on that for a very long time. A lot of people only talk about Citizens United. There are other constitutional interpretations that the Supreme Court has given. There's McCutcheon, which to some extent went further than Citizens United, given these corporations complete laissez-faire in the way they work with the government, etc. Anything else, Dave?
One more thing, I feel like some people go to the politicians go to Washington D.C. with a pure heart, and then they get bought and they get corrupted, and then I feel like our system also likes people who have stains on their record, or like they can hold something over their head. You know what I mean? Like they
Actually,
can.
wait, you named it, and that you, I mean, look, you are so right. In fact, that's why they have these FBI background checks to get folks in certain positions that they can't be blackmailed. But you're right. I mean, a blemish is no longer an unknown blemish, or is not something that's going to stop you. In fact, it may give you a heads up to get a position. So, I mean, you nailed it. Anything else, Dave, before I
That's
go to
it.
Jeff? Thank you, brother. Let's go to Jeff. Come
Dog.
on in, Jeff.
Berto, how are you?
I'm fine. Talk to me, my brother.
Hey, I want to follow up with Jim. When I hear the famous saying, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you, I run like hell because the government is not here to help you. You got to help yourself.
Uh,
Personal.
Yeah, I think you should help yourself. But I mean, what would you have been without the government helping you under Katrina? What would you have been before the government rebuilding the system that the plutocracy destroyed in 2008? What would you be the government before every single hurricane that FEMA takes care of? Brother, it's easy to say those words. You can say those words as much as you can. But the thing about government is it's usually hated when the plutocracy is flushed with money and can do the job. But as soon as they need help, you know who saves them? Government. You know all the monies that go to Exxon? Government. You know all the money that goes into research for the vaccines that you have right now? Government. You know all the new drugs that get created? It's not the plutocracy or the private sector that does it. All that investment is what the NIH and all these other governmental agencies do. That's where the money comes from, and the corporations put a front on it. So I can understand you being misled into that statement, but absent the government, I tell you what, most people would be poor. Absent the government, we wouldn't have in America what we have today. So for those who have that statement to make, I would love, at times I always say I would like to have a bifurcated country, one in which we have no government, where it's run by the corporations and plutocracy, and one in which we have order, and see where most people would find themselves living well. Anything else, Jeff?
I agree we should have order and the government serves a purpose. But when it gets too big, like it is, and the waste that's being
Why
found,
that?
it's
There's no,
ridiculous.
Jeff, there is no, again, and that's why I talk about having
You-
good information, Jeff. I'm sorry. You're being lied to. There is no efficiencies being found. In fact, I had a 13-minute video to
Oh
play
my God.
today. And the reason I couldn't play the 13-minute video is that I give precedence to all of you who call in. But I have a 13-minute video that would
I work
blow
for
some.
the government. I,
Sir,
I
I
work
worked
for
for
the
I
government.
worked for NASA. I understand government very well, sir. What you're saying, with all due respect, makes absolutely no sense about government. And you know who knows that more than anybody else? The corporations. Because you know who are the biggest welfare recipients in this country? Corporations. I got to go to Brian before we exit. So let's go to Brian.
Okay.
Good morning. How are you?
I am doing fine, my brother. Talk to me.
Okay. Now, if President Trump declared himself a woman, the first woman president of the United States, would you still hate his guts as much as you do?
That's a silly statement, but go with another commentary before we move on, sir.
Okay. Yeah, I know it's stupid, but that's why I brought it up. Now, when you're sitting on the board of whatever you were,
Move
did
to
you vote
amend.
on the other people against? Did you vote? Is the CEO of Exxon, is he voted in, or is he just steps up and says, I'm gonna be the CEO?
No, he's appointed by
How
the board of.
corporations run.
He's voted in by about 12 board of directors, or however many board of directors they have, and those board of directors are
Okay.
selected. So what I'm saying is that the totality of America, unlike a president of the United States, unlike the governor of a state, unlike the mayor of a county or of a city, that they don't get voted in by the people. So that's my statement. Continue.
Okay, now who's the president that cut the NASA budget 10% first 3 days that he was in office?
I don't know. I imagine you're going to
Obama.
tell me Obama, but here's the thing, right?
Yeah,
All of that is wrong. Obama
Obama.
made all kind. Look, Obama was in office to work with all these different Republicans and Democrats alike, neoliberals and progressives alike. And what they did is they compromised. I think those were bad compromises, but I don't know how much choice he had, given what they wanted to do with cutting the budget. This thing about cutting the budget, etc., is silly. What we should be doing is expanding the budget and increasing the tax base from the corporations who've been bilking us for all these years. But continue, brother.
Okay, now you try to explain where would we be for the last hurricane? Why don't you tell that to the people of North Carolina? How the
Well,
government failed.
no, the government didn't fail them. You know who failed them? Who failed them was a system.
Biden,
No, a system
President
failed
Biden.
them. No, a system failed them. And let me tell you how the system failed them. There are a lot of things that we can put into positions that we don't, because we follow the economic model of efficiency. There are times that efficiency is a hindrance to your existence. Efficiency can be a hindrance to things like disasters. It is much more efficient to have what's called just in time inventory. Look it up if you don't know what it is, but it's always more efficient to have just in time inventory until you have a pandemic, until you have a hurricane, until you have all these issues. Okay? So, what I'm trying to say is the model that says we want 100% efficiency is a flawed model for humanity. And I'm out of time, so I got to go, my dear brother Brian. But thank you for furthering the conversation. You have a wonderful rest of your day, and let me pass it on to the studio.
Well, thank you, Egberto. One more thing that I thought of was the destruction of Voice of America,
Oh, God.
Voice of Freedom. Yeah, this is really disgusting. The Voice of America is silent. The Voice of Europe, Radio Free Europe, is silent. Now, What does this tell you? Think about this. Silencing the press, yet another thing out of the dictator's playbook. The voice of America is now silent. Very, very sad. Jack, what you got? He says Jack doesn't have anything, so go take it home.
Oh my God! Jack doesn't have anything.
The wisdom was so wise, he just couldn't come up with anything else. So I guess we're good there.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Anyway, folks, I am so sorry. Oh, go ahead, Jack.
Oh, we enjoyed the comment, the arsonist lecturing a firefighter.
I know. Patrick comes up with some stuff, man. But anyway, look, I love you guys, all right? But I have a very important video I wanted you guys to see on Social Security, but you have precedence in the calls, so that comes first. It's all at politicsdoneright.com/newsletter in today's edition. politicsdoneright.com/newsletter. Go watch that video. It is very important in Social Security. It dispels the lies that you hear a whole lot. Anyway, folks, if you need to reach me directly, send me an email to kpft@politicsdoneright.com, kpft@politicsdoneright.com. My name is Egberto Willis. This is Politics Done Right, and you guys know how I end this baby. I am what? Out!
You're listening